Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this first episode of the Sports Talk Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dwaine, and on today's podcast, we have a lot to cover. I want to spend some time today discussing Manchester United. I want to talk about the transfer market. More importantly, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, the sale of the club, and what that means for Eric Ten Hag and the club moving forward. I may dabble a little bit in some other aspects of world football. I'm particularly intrigued by the latest development coming out of PSG regarding Kilian Mbappe and him wanting to leave on a free next year, and the club don't want that. So maybe we get into that as well. And then I'll transition after that, and I'll spend some time talking about cricket. Cricket, lovely cricket. In this case, it's not that lovely, and I'll spend time discussing what now is the closure on a disappointing experience for the West Indies cricketers in Zimbabwe. It's almost as if I can't control myself. There's some laughter coming out, not because it's funny, but it's tragic. And so I'll spend some time talking a little bit about that, give you my thoughts. Maybe by the time you see this, you may have seen my other video on West Indies cricket. And that video was really a heart to heart. I was emotional in many ways. And that I did shortly after we realized that the West Indies would not be able to qualify for the World Cup. And it's the first time in his existence. And so I had some thoughts on that, so I hope you'll also check that out. But I'll talk some more about the state of West Indies cricket. And maybe, given time, we can also spend a little bit of time talking about the state of the Ashes series, because I've been enjoying it. It's been extremely good cricket, competitive cricket. Competitive cricket in many ways that, because of Ben Stokes, it's closer than it probably should be. And so if I get time, I'll also spend some time talking about that as well. And so I appreciate that you stick around. I hope that you like this format. You put your comments in the chat. And yeah, I'm hoping to do more of these things, and moving forward, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully you enjoy. And yeah, so let's start with football, soccer. And for those of you, soccer is the right word as well. It comes from association football. Don't kill the Americans for that. That's the rules that people are agreed with. When we had these 11-a-side things, I should probably do a video on that as well. But anyway, we'll start with Manchester United. But before I get into the club itself, I want to start by sending well wishes to the Manchester United legend, Edwin van der Sar. Just about the time I was about to record this show, I saw a number of tweets. I saw Ajax Football Club putting out a tweet indicating that Edwin suffered a medical condition in Croatia, and he's in hospital in stable condition. So before I even get into it, let me read quickly what Ajax says. So this is from Ajax FC, and this is what they are reporting on Edwin van der Sar. And it says, on Friday, Edwin van der Sar has had a bleeding around his brain. He's currently in hospital in intensive care and is in stable condition. Once there's more concrete information, an update will follow. Everyone at Ajax wishes Edwin a speedy recovery. We're thinking of you. My sentiments exactly. I hope Edwin pulls through. Lovely individual. Probably one of the guys we were hoping would also come back to Manchester United. Fantastic job as a player. And his leadership, played all over, won the Champions League with Ajax, played Juventus, he played at Fulham, which many people thought was a low point, but He was an excellent goalkeeper. Comes to Manchester United, offered that solidity at the back, lovely attacking uh, instinct as well. He could ping a pass really forward quickly, and that would launch a number of Manchester United counterattacks and attacking plays during the Ferguson era and the latter part of the Ferguson era. And so I wish him all the very best. I once met Edwin van der Sar many years ago in Chicago, and at a Manchester United training session. I think it was at Toyota Park at the time, where the Chicago Fire used to play. And I got into Manchester United had sent me some passes to go see the training session, and I attended. And afterwards, you could get autographs and mingle a little bit with some of the players, and not really mingle, but you came in good contact with them. And Edwin signed an autograph for me, and shook my hand, and it's a cool dude. And so I wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope it's not serious, and I hope that he'll get the level of care necessary, and he will pull through, and he'll be back to doing what he does best, which is now being a football administrator, and a quite good one at that as well. And so, well wishes to Edwin van der Sar. We're pulling for you, so sending a lot of support to your family as well. All right. So, Manchester United. Manchester United is supposed to be a football club for sale. As far as we know, there are two main people behind, there are two main individuals or consortiums, or however you want to put it, that were in pole position to become the next owner of Manchester United. So we know about Sheikh Jassim, 92 Foundation, the Qatari. Many reports suggest he's in pole position. He has offered to buy out the Glazers in 100% in true form, buy them out, take over the club. There is also talks of Ineos under Sir Jim Radcliffe. There have been other groups too that have been popping up. We don't really know all the details. Of course, Rain Group in New York is handling all of the financial background checks and the mediating between the Glazers and potential buyers. Lots of reports talking about whether they really want to sell. Then there's reports about rifts within the family. Who wants to stay on? Who wants to cut ties 100%? And I put it to you that whatever this is, it's dangerous. These people don't care about the football club. They only care about the bottom line. For them, they've run the football club into it's just unconscionable. In fact, what they've done is not legal anymore. You cannot leverage buy out a club the way the Glazers did. And so here we are. The transfer market is open. Thankfully, Manchester United has done some business, and we'll get to that in a second. But here we are, after knowing that the club was up for sale in November, we still haven't resolved this. And if you said to yourself, if they had an ounce of care for this club, they would have wrapped up the business long time ago. They would have taken the money from Jassim. because clearly he's overpaying anyway. 5 million, 6 billion, 5 billion, 6 billion, whatever the number is. They'd have took the money, they'd have divided up the way they want to divide it up amongst themselves. Joel, Avram, the unnamed siblings, and they would have allowed a new ownership to come in to give some clarity to the manager, to the players, the potential players. Imagine you're a top player, you're thinking about Manchester United. Yes, it's always a draw, but you don't know this current situation. They would allow that. You'd have expected this to be wrapped up in March. By God, by the end of June, somewhere around there. So that way, there's clear direction. We know that Eric Ten Hag is hampered in the transfer market. The money isn't there. And we're talking about one of the richest clubs in the world. But financial fair play. Spent a lot of money last year on players. Manchester United, you read all the reports, they don't do a good job of offloading players. So they don't really recuperate anything off that. Whenever they start to sell a player, they sell them for much less than other clubs would be able to do. Your likes of a Chelsea, even Manchester City, whoever you think who are recycling or not recycling, but getting players off the books that still have ability, they don't recuperate a lot of money. Manchester United is just not good at doing that. Terrible. And they also overpay for players. That seems to be changing somewhat, you hope. But we're talking about a long legacy here now, which is impacting what kind of business you can do in this transfer market to prepare a manager who won your trophy in the first season, took you to the final of the FA Cup, Champions League position. So you know you have to be in that position of strengthening the squad in his image in order to compete again on all four fronts. This time not Europa League, but obviously in the Champions League. And this man wants these players in early. And there's some glaring holes in the squad that needs filling. And I'll get to that again, but there is no way that the Glazers care about this club. In no uncertain terms, they don't care about this club. I think they're trying to leave on the way with a big middle finger. That's what they're doing. I mean, that might seem convoluted or a poor analysis here, but these guys are orchestrating a sale. The money is there and they don't want to take it. They don't want to just give the club a way out. Cash out. The team is struggling. Leave. No one wants you. No fan wants you. I don't even think people who don't like Manchester United want you there. So this is how bad it is. It's time to go. Take the money. But I put it to you, and these are some of the big traits of the billionaires. They're Teflon. They don't care what fans think. There's nothing fans can do that really is pushing any kind of pressure on them. Manchester United fans have been protesting the Glazers since they bought the club. And it's done nothing. I'm not diminishing the protest because it's important and there are people who are born and raised in the area. Club means much more to them than some cash cow for some rich American billionaire family who owns NFL teams and who owned a lot of malls and all sort of things, who only saw that for making a lot more money, who have not invested a penny of their money in the club. And so the protest happens, right? And probably the closest to really pushing them was the protest that happened with a few years ago when the Liverpool game was forced to be postponed, especially around the period of a Super League. But they managed to just look at that and not worry about it. And I guess that's the kind of special trait of those type of people. They can go limits. They're really good at doing that. So sell the club because it's really causing an issue. Will selling the club tomorrow morning give Eric Ten Hag a bigger budget? It doesn't seem that way. Multiple reports suggest that there are some limitations, largely because of what the Glazers have done. They haven't sold well. The club hasn't sold players well. The interest on the debt, they haven't really invested in the infrastructure in the club. So some of these things can be written off and then give you an opportunity to buy more players or spend more on top of the kind of turnover Manchester United usually makes. And so whatever the new ownership model will come in, and if it's the Qatari guys, and we've discussed this already. I have a video on the channel where I talked about this, where I don't necessarily like state ownership. I don't like it. It's not clear this is state ownership, but it's also not clear to me it's not. But that's for a different day. And but those guys supposedly have a plan. So if it's the Qatari guys, then they're gonna come and they're gonna spend a lot of money on maybe stadium redevelopment of Carrington, money into the area. Once they start pumping in that kind of money, which you're 100% allowed to do, and also clearing the debt is important. They will clear the debt. Then that sets up Eric Ten Hag come next year, moving forward, bigger budget, attracting higher quality players, and that's what you want. So they need to leave. Every kind of journalist, tier one, all the way down, are saying the budget for Manchester United is 150, maybe 120 to 150 before that's what they have to spend on the books. And if they want to spend more than that, then you're talking about offloading players. And offloading a Manchester United player is hard. It's like needle in a haystack sometimes. They're on high wages. And oftentimes, even if a player wants to go, what it really accounts to is Manchester United maybe have to help fund that deal, maybe give them a payoff or pay part of the salary they would not be getting when they go to a club that is of a lower standard, or even if they go to a club that you're competing with, maybe their wage structure is not the same. And because of that, it's hard to get rid of players. But transfer market recently opened, and Manchester United finally announced Mason Mount earlier this week. It's given a number 7 shirt. It's a big deal. If you're Manchester United fan, you know that number 7 is for the greats. Your Brian Robsons, your Eric Cantona, Beckham, Cristiano Ronaldo. George Best, I think, wore it at sometimes. Did he? I think he wore 10 too. So it's a significant shirt because of what it means to the club. The number 7 is the iconic shirt at Manchester United. And so for him to get it, and many thought that maybe Garnacho would have gotten it because he's a promising youngster. But Mount gets it. So in a way, I'm actually intrigued by this because that means Mount is really a big character, probably bigger than I thought he is, because he could take another number. He's not a hype transfer, and I think Mount might surprise us because relatively 55 million, somewhere around there, 60 million, where with add-ons or so. He's a very good player. Chelsea, I think Chelsea fans love him. Clearly, what's happening at Chelsea is a, a totally different story. And these guys have tons and tons and tons of players. Who knows what this Borley guy came in and what is he doing there? But they have to offload, and I think Chelsea is a place you want to shop because as it gets later in the transfer market, you might be able to get some players. But back to Mason Mount, I think he offers something that looks eerily similar to Christian Eriksen, but much more energetic. He has good technical ability. He's England international as well. Won the Champions League, so he understands some trophy pedigree. So I hope it works out. I think it will work out. I mean, it's a Ten Hag signing. I don't think Ten Hag has missed a beat in terms of the players that he's brought in. And if the manager wants him, then that's how it should be, at least for these next few years. And so that seems to be out of the way. The next thing is the goalkeeping unit. A lot of reports are now saying that Onyana from Inter Milan has already agreed terms. Inter Milan didn't like the opening bid from Manchester United, but they, Romano, Fabrizio Romano, all the journalists, the guys at the Athletic, everybody who you will follow, they talked about the cordial, if it's a way of putting it, relationship that will happen between Inter Milan and Manchester United. So much so that there's going to be a negotiation that will allow a deal to happen. So it seems like Manchester United will get a goalkeeper. I mean, this guy is interesting. Plays a lot with his feet. He comes out. He takes a lot of risk. But it's the kind of modern goalkeeper that starts to play early. Maybe allows the defensive line to be up a little bit more. We'll see. I mean, it's the kind of player that Ten Hag wants. Worked with him before, and so he knows him. He's gonna make a bunch of mistakes, but you hope that those mistakes are small in comparison to the kind of impact that he will offer in terms of the kind of attacking football that Ten Hag wants and what Manchester United want or expect to be played, what the fans expect. He comes in at an interesting moment because a very distinguished, and I'm going to say distinguished goalkeeper is out of contract. And so we have David De Gea, who's been at the club since the Fergie era. He's been a wonderful player for Manchester United. A number of times winning the player of the year for the club, which is something you don't want your goalkeeper to do. Which probably indicates the state that the club was in as well. But De Gea has been there for a long time. Excellent shot stopper. Great reflexes. Good with saving with his feet. It just can't pass. It's not comfortable enough on the ball to leave his line, to walk out, to be a sweeper keeper, whatever you want to call it. Just this doesn't have that ability. And in modern football, increasingly, the goalkeeper has to play a bigger role. So we're seeing, so this Onyana guy is one of the greatest exponents of playing with his feet. You're looking at the likes of great touch. You look at Alisson at Liverpool. Those guys are really good at their feet. That guy's really good with his feet. The original Manchester United had this before. If you remember, Fabian Barthez, a little bit crazy as well. But if this goes through, and it might go through by the time this podcast is out, then that's a major part covered for Eric Ten Hag, because it seems as if De Gea is out of a contract. I don't necessarily understand all the details, and it seems like he was going to sign, and then the club withdrew something. So something isn't right there, and I hope they are able to resolve that in an amicable way, because this guy has been at the club for a very long time, deserves a testimonial. And so you wanna you wanna let players go in an honorable way. So if he's not in favor with the plans of Eric Ten Hag, then he has to go, even though he's been at the club for a very long time. This is how it works. But you want to do so in a respectable manner, and I hope that whatever is happening there can be resolved, and he deserves his testimonial. And thank him for the service for those many years. So those are two spots there. You got a midfielder. People are not necessarily that excited about Mason Mount, but I think he'll have a massive impact on Manchester United. And part of that reason is because when you look at where the team is struggling, you need a center forward. And that's the position on the football field that costs the most right now for the club. And you would think you want that position first. I think if you get your center forward first, then you start to jump for joy when additional players come through. But that's not how you structure deals. You just have to get the players you've identified to strengthen your club and get them over the line. So if Mason Mount is that, then check marks. If Onyana is that, then once it happens, check box. But it seems as if the kind of money you would spend on those two players wouldn't allow you to go for the kind of ready-made striker you want, right? The likes of a Harry Kane. If you're thinking about a guy that will give you 20, 25 goals, free up the attacking lineup some more for likes of Marcus Rashford and others, take off some of that burden, well, that's the guy you want. He may not be there for 5, 6 years, but if he gives you a 3 years of solid performances, you might be able to win a title or win some major trophy or go far in the Champions League. You never know. Then that's a Nigerian guy, Victor Osimhen, also can't afford him based on what we're seeing. Glazonomics again. And so, what do you do for the striking department? I guess you could probably get one of those guys where you to sell a bunch of players. To this date, they've only gotten rid of not got to this date they've only managed to sell Zidane Iqbal, measly amount of money. So you have to get players off the books, get some money in order to be shopping for the big leagues or to be shopping in the big leagues. And so it means that it's unlikely one of those players will come in, but you need a striker. And everything now points to that kid at Atalanta. And he's unproven. Rasmus Højlund, if I pronounce that correctly. Scandinavian kid. It looks like he could be good, but he's not proven yet. And the money that they were talking about, the 80 million, is just nonsense. You can't pay 80 million for that kid. However, as I was about to record this podcast, you started to see splashing in the media tweets all on the tabloids. You see all the fan channels coming up with things. And there is word coming out suggesting that Mason Greenwood could go on loan to Atalanta, which would then mean that Manchester United is figuring out a way to probably get this Hoyland kid for a lower price. So they're solving a problem if he leaves, but it's probably also solving a problem for Manchester United when it comes to Mason Greenwood. We all know the Mason Greenwood case. Had a bout of domestic abuse, it seems. He was charged. There's tape recordings. I have not listened to them. I won't, because I can't listen to that kind of stuff. But a lot of reputable people have listened to them and described how horrific they sound. You know, he was charged, but all the charges are gone. So the state no longer is pursuing things. What to make of that is just that he's not being charged. But it's still a massive problem for Manchester United because something happened. And so he's on a kind of a suspension while they launch an investigation. And they've been doing this investigation for quite some time now. So I think they launched that investigation or launch it proper after the charges were dropped. And so they have to do something with Mason Greenwood. And Mason Greenwood, probably if it was a regular player, you know, they would have parted ways with him a long time ago. But and this is where things aren't consistent, and this is where and this is a point where in life it's not fair, and I definitely don't agree with this. But partly, and this is my way of thinking about this, the reason why Mason Greenwood is still a Manchester United player is because they think he's a generational talent. They think he has the ability to transcend from. They think he has the definite ability to be a top class footballer. And if they didn't think so, they would have gotten rid of it. And if they're working out a deal with Atalanta to get Rasmus to come to Old Trafford and then Mason to go there, it gives Manchester United more time to figure out what to do. And it also helps them get a player that I think they want. I don't know if they want him to lead the line now, but I think if you ask anybody reasonable, they would have said what Manchester United needed is 2 strikers. Let's get a striker that is young, that can play cup games, that can play the odd Premier League game, come off the bench, that won't get upset to sit behind the likes of a Harry Kane. That would have been the ideal scenario. That is how you would be running a football club properly. If you're running a football club, you buy 2, and you know you get something fresh out of one. There's this relationship building. There's so many games, you know you'll get games, and you'll sit there watching that someday I'll take that lead position. I think that's what they want. So I don't think getting Rasmus is a bad thing. It's just how much you get him for, because you're struggling financially in the sense that the budget for this year is low. But if you can get him, if you can get some players off, maybe look under the couch while the Glazers are walking out, maybe you could buy another striker. But I don't know. But there's certainly some developments happening by the time this is out, all of this would be sorted. But if Greenwood goes one way and he comes the other way, then I can only think that that's some kind of a structure in terms of either the cost or future costs, or all, you know, giving them a direct way of taking some cash and not really respending it right away, because they'll get a player that can most likely give them a number of goals if settled. So I think that's where we are. Again, the Manchester United situation, regardless of the transfer market, the biggest thing is getting the club out of the hands of the Glazers, which will not come easy because you hear from some accounts, and I know I'm going back over this again. Some of them don't want to leave. They want minority stake. Others want a clean break, and or maybe it's a negotiation on price. There's now new talks about, yeah, I want to leave, but the valuation might be much more. Uh, Manchester United might be worth more in another few years. So if we stick around some more, we can get more money. It's all going everywhere, and no one is talking. The Glazers aren't saying anything, and those connected to the deals, those who are trying to buy the club, have to be very careful of what they're saying because they've signed confidentiality agreements. Uh, I think earlier this week, Sir Jim Ratcliffe was talking about something else, and he mentioned a few things around trying to buy the club, but he had to be careful or circumspect in what he says. So is he still in it? He tried to give that impression. I don't think so, but my word is sell the club, get out, take your millions that you've acquired and fail to reinvest in the club. Imagine if you were just only reinvesting all of that turnover back into the football club. The stadium probably would be bigger. You would have been improving the training facilities. The amount of money you'd be able to spend on players, and you could have been doing it in such a way that you'd have a super squad year in year out. And so this is also why it's hurt so bad to think that a club like Manchester United don't need rich billionaires. They don't need sovereign wealth funds. They make enough to stand on their own. You just need a right ownership structure that will allow them to reinvest that kind of a money. I mean, Manchester United sells everything from chips to your faucet. So, come on. You tell me what you think in the comments, guys. But that's the state of that there. Thank you guys so far for watching. I'm going to talk about some other things. I'm going to transition into some football. We could take a little break here if you want as well. I don't know if we'll have a break. If you want to sponsor this show, I'm ready for it. I want to talk a little bit about. There's a lot of things happening in the transfer market, a lot of exciting news. But the one that's most intriguing to me is the Kilian Mbappe one. The Mbappe thing is interesting. Mbappe relationship between PSG is funny. He was at Monaco. They spent all that money. They got him. PSG is trying to build a super team that hasn't really won anything. They won, most of the French league titles. Sometimes they don't. But given the kind of strength of their squad, it's shocking. They certainly haven't won the prize that they want to, which is the Champions League. That doesn't come easy, but they have arguably the best striker on the planet, arguably the best player on the planet. It's hard to know these things. I don't really like to talk about football that way because I think, yes, you need top class individuals, but it's when the team structure is right that the individual shines even more. But no doubt about it, if you had to draw for naming one of the best players in the world, it's Mbappe will be. So he's a top class player. It seems as if he wanted to go to Real Madrid when was it, last year or the year before? And there was something, and it was dead set on him going to Real Madrid, and it didn't happen. Florentino Perez, president of Real Madrid, was unhappy. It almost sounded to me And I'd have to go back and read that stuff as if he was persona non grata at Real Madrid. Like they wouldn't even take him back because they thought he was coming. But now there was a report that came out earlier today because we know in the last few weeks Mbappe had said something of him not signing a new contract at PSG and he would leave when his contract was over, which incensed PSG because what that really means is I'm going to run my contract down and I can walk away and pick my own club. In fact, what it really means that come January you could be in negotiations with other clubs with potential suitors. And those guys are upset by that because that means they won't get a penny. They won't be able to benefit from any transfer for Mbappe. And they got Mbappe when he was what, 18, 17? When was it? Something like that. And so he's you have to think that Mbappe is either in his prime or is going to get to his prime, but he has a sustained period where he should be firing on all cylinders, barring any kind of injury, for the next 7, 8 years. Could be more. And so, maybe not more, but, not 10, but who knows? And so they want a piece of it. So if he's not going to re-sign a new contract, if he's not going to stay at PSG, if he's not going to do any contract extensions or anything like that, they want him to go. They want him to go now. So when he said he wasn't going to stay and he's just going to run his contract down, they were incensed by that. And now today, I think I saw an article from Sky Sports, actually a video from Sky Sports on the transfer suggesting that PSG believes that Mbappe has an agreement with Real Madrid that he will come next year on a free, which would probably mean that his salary would be just out the roof. Because when players walk, either they come for a fee and you don't have to negotiate any transfer between clubs, they get a little bit more in their pocket. I don't know if that's true in terms of if he has an agreement, but that's what PSG thinks, and they don't like it. And so they've threatened Mbappe to either sign an extension or go now. And they will be taking orders. Not orders, but they'll take bids. And the highest bidder they'll sell him. They don't matter who it is. This is basically what PSG is saying. PSG is saying that if Accrington Stanley comes up and offers the highest amount, we're selling. We're selling. So they're coming with their own position here. I don't know if they actually mean that, but that's probably the only option right now. Because if the player refuses to re-sign the contract and want to leave on a free, then they have to threaten them. Can a compromise come together? I don't know. We'll have to see. But this is very intriguing. I think the very least the compromise that might happen is one where he signed something like a 1-year extension or something like that, still giving them some form of or a 2-year extension. So with maybe a gentleman's handshake suggesting that he'll be allowed to leave next year, but at least he'll have things he'll have years on the contract, so that way PSG might be able to recuperate some money in the transfer market. I believe that's what the best, because I don't necessarily think there are clubs out there that can shell out the kind of money that it would cost to get him, especially with the wage package. I don't think Real Madrid can afford it this year. I could be wrong. I mean, Bayern Munich is in need of a striker. Maybe they can do it, but it would really break their budget and their financial structure there. Manchester United needs a striker, but they don't have the kind of money to do it. I mean, that could happen next year, assuming that the club is sold and there's different arrangements on the debt and so on, and investment in the club where they could kind of pony up that kind of cash, and it won't be a violation of financial fair play. Although, this financial fair play thing is interesting. A lot of clubs get away with it. Maybe Manchester United could, but I don't know what will happen here, but it's very intriguing. Very, very intriguing. Let me know your thoughts. I don't know what you think. You know, will will Mbappe stay at PSG? It's going to be a saga. You always think the transfer market gives you some kind of ups and downs and things going left or right, but this is a straight up, straight up soap opera right here. And so we'll see how it gets resolved. All right, so this ends my discussion on football. For the remaining time on this podcast, I want to talk some cricket. I want to start with some West Indies cricket again. Gotta take a sip for this. I love to sip something from a sponsor, so I like you, boy. West Indies, West Indies. Every time we think it can't get any worse, it does. Get my glasses off. So now West Indies lost today to Sri Lanka, and that was the final match of the World Cup qualification for the West Indies, and you know ended in the disgrace. They lost the match. Let's get that out of the way first. A disgraceful 243. I'm not going to mince words on this one. I thought it would be much more reserved, but I have to tell you how I see it. You wouldn't believe my credibility is at stake if I don't really tell you how I see it. Sri Lanka easily won by 8 wickets, 34 balls remaining. Dominant performance by them. 244 for two. West Indies 243. And so Super Six ends where West Indies are number 5 in the Super Six. So Sri Lanka, Netherlands, Scotland, Zimbabwe, West Indies, and Oman. Where do we go from here? There's all sorts of autopsy reports. Every now and again, we're moving from one thing to the next. I don't know if we need another report. I don't want. I've said it before. I don't want to hear another report. I don't want to read another Patterson report, another what kind of report. You name them. I've read them. I just finished reading the one that happened after the West Indies' failure to qualify for the T20 World Cup, the second part of the T20 World Cup. There was a report on that too. Brian Lara was on it. All sort of stuff. What are we gonna do? Proper decline in everywhere, in every format of this thing called West Indies cricket. It's just shambolic. My video I did, I talked about why I was really emotional in that video. I talked about what it really means to play for West Indies. And I targeted it not necessarily on the players themselves. I also targeted on the region. They understand the value of West Indies cricket and what that has done to the development of what it means to be from the Caribbean, what it means to live in the diaspora, especially England, because that's where all of that happened too, and what that kind of thing meant, or the connection to struggle, apartheid, all of that kind of stuff. They, from that kind of pure kind of a political aspect of it, and then to think about the joy of what it means. We can reflect on that because that's where the winning comes from. But not only winning, the kind of style in which you won, the pioneering approach to cricket, the aggression, the style, the way we took the word calypso cricket from people laughing at us, thinking it's fun and games, something that would bring joy to everyone. And others started to say we had to follow to just utter decline. And yeah, we have a test match series starting soon against India, and I'll do it on another podcast or on another video. But what do we do? Everybody's in front of us now. We struggled to get to the last World Cup. We were lucky to get to the last World Cup. How is it that the two-time champions who should have won three in a row? But anyway, my Indian friends always tell me that's the start of Indian, the start of the rise of Indian cricket. Many of them have told me this. But how is it that we have to go through a qualification to get to that? Then, we blamed it on T20, we blamed it on this. Now we're not even anywhere good in that anymore. Two back-to-back performances that were shambolic at the World T20 Championships. We've reached a stage where it can get worse. I'm gonna say it can get worse. We have to arrest this decline, and it has to start with us. I'm saying it again. People who are from the Caribbean, who grew up there or live in the diaspora, like me or everybody, we have to be involved in some way. We have to demand better because this is the cricket we're getting because I guess we want that. And there's a lot of structural challenges to cricket in general that we're also facing. So we have to fix a lot of things. The big three is ridiculously powerful. India, Australia, England. So we're wrestling against that kind of stuff. We're wrestling against population. We're a small unit. We have to do better to develop players. We have to fix this, and it can't be a top-down fix alone. It has to be a grassroots thing. We have to completely transform West Indies cricket in every region, and it has to be everyone on the same page. They need a proper development plan. There's a lot of things wrong with West Indies cricket. I mean, I don't even know if I can pack it into this kind of thing. You know, we still produce some talent, but the talent, one, I think the talent gets too quickly to the top, in the sense that because we're in so much decline that every time we see a bright spark, we get a player immediately international cricket. When they're not ready for that, or even when you look back in the past, they wouldn't have been able to get into international cricket that easily. One, because the teams were better. So I'm not trying to say that a young talent no you don't face the same kind of obstacles they do before, right? Like that's true. You can get in easier if you score a few runs in a first class season, which is too short. I believe the shortest amongst test playing or first class cricket nations. So you're not getting in a lot of opportunities. But if you go back to the period when we had a lot of players coming through, many of them would have gone through another kind of finishing school, just that other than what's happening in the Caribbean, right? So my dad, my grandparents, they all talked about shell chief cricket and all of that stuff, and can't remember watching all of that stuff. I remember seeing some in the maybe in the 80s, the late 80s, 90s, or whatever. But they would have gone to England, played league cricket, county cricket. That kind of development is important. You take right now. I feel like we need to find 20. This is really a bad kind of way of doing this, but one of the solutions probably to arrest some of the problems while you do a larger plan. Where are the 20 best promising cricketers we have in the league? And we got to take them and we got to figure out a way to carry them somewhere else. They need to live on the road properly. They need to be on all of these tours in England. They need to be in places in India, Australia, wherever. They got to experience some other forms of cricket because those things help with the development. Not only because you get exposed to other players and conditions, but it just helps them to develop as individuals. And those things, that kind of maturity is necessary for them to transform that into their game. But something needs, we need to save the cricketers that we have right now that are talented, that are young, to make sure that they get the opportunity to grow and develop. We're not playing enough test cricket. Look at it. Outside of those big three I named earlier, people are struggling to play test cricket. You can't play three test match in a series. It's just not good. That's not helping when another team is just when there's Ashes going five matches. And I understand that it's a business as well, right? So there's packed grounds. You watch the Ashes as you guys are standing outside in Leeds in some kind of an apartment or a house because they can't get in. When Australia is playing Sydney ground is packed, Perth, we don't have that. No one comes through. And I know it's a two-way thing, right? In the sense that if it's not good enough, hardworking people, especially people with meager resources, which we have in the Caribbean, they're not going to show up. So we have to figure out that development plan. And it has to be one that they finally agree on and doing. And the governments of the region have to pump money into it. The board has to do something, pump money as well. And we have to save the cricket. We have to start churning out a lot more talented cricketers and then harnessing that talent. We can't expect English county cricket to save us. They're not letting us in. Not in the numbers that before, right? We have to do something. There's some things when you get to the level of international cricket you can't fix. Everybody can improve when you get to international cricket. All the great players do it, and even the not so great players. But there's some fundamentals that you can't fix when you get up there. You get exposed too easily. You see Steve Smith fixing things. You see Brian Lara did it. Everybody did it. I just need to name a few. Adjust this, do that, because other people are trying to get you up. But when you don't even know to come forward or backwards, that's not, you don't fix that at test match level. So I'm flabbergasted. I'm really left in a position of I'm hurt. The region is hurt. I know all the people, and I still watch. Imagine I got up and watched this cricket again this morning. For what? Just because that's what I do. You didn't sleep well. At the same time, I'm watching the Ashes because I want to see good cricket. But it's not about recycling who's captain doing that. There's some fundamental things that we have to fix. And also, the performance on the field is just not good enough either. Not good enough. Let me tell you, you see, when you're not playing well, when you averages in 20s and 30s and you're struggling in every format of the game, the last thing you want to be doing is to be bad at fielding. Don't be poor at fielding. You have to do those things right. You should be the fittest team out there. You should be diving. I mean, we need to think you're swimmers out there when you're trying to stop a ball. You have to create a culture. There needs to be high standards when you step on that pitch, when you represent the region. You have minimum is to work hard, to die for the shirt. When you start to do those things, then you start to take your thing much more seriously. And then your game will improve. I'm not asking, it will. Talent alone is not enough, and we're never short on talent. We won't be popping out the same level of talent as England or Australia and so on. We just don't have those kind of numbers, and we can't expect to think what happened in the 70s, 80s, and so on. You know, see, those might be anomalies, right? Like once in a time where you can send out 7, 8 fast bowlers, right, and only 4 can make the team. It may not come around like that, but I've been watching. I mean, we haven't had a world class batsman since when? Gale saw one. I don't know. I mean, since so I thought Shea Hope would have been. We also thought Pooran could have been to that level to be a next level player. Same with that kid from Guyana, Hetmeyer. So, but you see the talent, and you see some things there. You see some fast bowling talent here, and Jaden Seals. You see Alzar Joseph. These guys are not terrible. I'm not asking for us to like recreate Michael Holding every day or Joel Garner, Malcolm Marshall, Curtly Ambrose, Walsh. I'd love to wake up one morning and we end up with 6, 7, 8 of those guys. A Viv, Richard Richardson, Brian, whoever, right? Like, I'm not asking you to give me Garfield Sobers. I need you to give me those guys' effort, probably. And we'll unearth some talent. The talent is always there. When you look at under 19 cricket, if you watch the space, you look at some of these cricketers, the difference between some of these guys is just not that much different. Maybe they're working better, maybe they get better access to coaching, and which is true in many ways. They have more resources to develop their game. But it's not like we can walk out and say there's no talent in the West Indies. So some of it is application too. Some of it is just not is individual application. Some of it is that we push them too early into some positions because we just don't play enough cricket. We don't expose them enough, so they have deficiencies. But we have to recreate a culture of excellence. And this will always be for West Indies cricket or any kind of nation states that don't have the kind of resources that others have. You have to do more with less. So that's why the pride thing, the learning from your mistakes thing, and we can never have this happen again is kind of much more important than some other kind of countries. Man, look at this. Look at the Aussies Test series. I was remarking this the other day. Who's it? Mitchell Marsh, right? Is it? He comes into the third Test match because there's an injury. Who picked up a hamstring injury for them? So he comes into the into the game, scores 100. That's the kind of thing you want to see. You want to see a team where I am not in it. That's Mitchell Marsh. He's not in it. I can't get in the team. Somebody got a hamstring injury, and I get my chance. I score 118 runs. I'm trying to tell the selector, well, are you gonna take me out? That's the kind of thing, right? That's how you think about it now. And he's not out again on 17, and he may come and do something good, and put Australia back in a position where they try to win the series. So you want competition, and we may not have that right now because we don't have enough players. So fine, but you need a mentality. Cricket is a toughness thing. That's why Test cricket is the most important cricket. You do good there, you can do good anywhere. It's not a cliche when they talk about test of character and all that stuff. It's the hardest cricket to play. No one is setting any field outside the circle for you so you can hit wildly. That doesn't work. So I beg the board, I beg the region, all these guys in leadership positions, hanging out at CARICOM meetings and whatever, they need to do something. And I'm not talking about any kind of deep-seated, like, takeover of the cricket, because it has to be independent from the countries, obviously, in some ways. It's not like, we're not talking about interference or something like that. But we're talking about a way to think about a cohesive strategy that involves the grassroots development, which requires that development to happen in the individual nation states with support from, I imagine, if the cricket is important to countries, with whatever meager resources, to allocate some. And then hopefully there's support from corporate from corporations in the region. And you have to get creative, and you have to have a proper strategy and a proper plan for the development moving forward. And I'm going to spend some time on this in another podcast, on another video. But we're dealing with a lot of structural challenges. We're dealing with people who are ahead of us now, so we have to catch them back up. We have this legacy, and we have to know what it means, and stop not saying the legacy is not important. It is. West Indies is everybody's favorite team. We're like Brazil of cricket. If I'm not supporting my own country, then they support West Indies. This is the kind of thing that the legacy you're living on. So we need to do this. We need to totally redevelop the bottom of the cricket. We have to know that some of the things that you're going to do now will not bear fruit for 10 years, and be okay with it, because there's a plan for it. And we need to sharpen up at the top right now. The players that are in the mix for the senior team and are already there, they need to have a higher standard. They need to hold themselves accountable. They need to recognize why it's important to don that shirt, put on that cap, and do their best. And we need to develop a next level of cricketers that can come through. We need to redevelop pitches. We need to do a lot, right? And it can be something that the Antiguans are doing on one side, the Trinidadians are doing, the Jamaicans are doing something else. Everybody have to go and fight it out. They have to sit at a table. They have to argue. Will never stop, but we have to come at the end of the day with a clear strategy, and then we implement it as best as possible. Don't deviate. It may not work 100% the way you want, but if you commit to something that is for the future of West Indies cricket, because you have a lot of answers already. Just go dig up half of those reports and be brutally honest. and start making some fundamental changes, and some changes that no matter which administration comes in afterwards, some of those things they will not touch. So identify what the best practice is. What's the best development for youth cricket? What is it? What are Australia doing? What is India doing? What is Australia doing? What is India doing? What is England doing? What can you learn? Again, what did we do right before? Work hard on doing that and figure it out. Spend with the money, whatever, and come to agreement. In fact, be transparent about it. Sit down and say, look, we really refocused our efforts. These are the next 10 things we must do. We want to see it through. We have confidence that if we do this, it should bear fruit. Obviously, you wouldn't 100% know if it will, but, and get people to commit that if this is the development plan and we have markers, your KPIs, whatever language you want to use, that certain things are untouched until we see through. Get some independent committees that can evaluate these things that have nothing to do with friends and family and networks. And let's see if we can do something. It's going to suck for a long time, but if we start to do something right away, hopefully it will bear fruit in years to come. But we can't move from 10th or 9th or wherever we are and expect to go to number 4 or 3 or 1 overnight. So I beg you, I beg, this thing called cricket is important. It's beyond sport. I beg you to reconsider the influence of what this has had on society. Go read back CLR, James. I mean, I'm not sending it to school. But go think about what this project called West Indies Cricket did for even regional integration and so on. As however you want to think about how good that is or not good. But don't lose sight of how important this is. It can get worse, and we cannot afford it to get worse. We have to do better. We have to save it. And we have to accept where we are, which is at the bottom. But once you know that you're there and believe it, and believe that everything has gone wrong, and you start a proper way to get ourselves out of this, then we have to be committed to it. And we have to be open to a lot of criticism, but we have to be open to tell the world what we're doing. And we have to work at it, because you can. And the cricket will rise again. What Rudder said, rally around the West Indies now and forever. We need it ever. How do we need it right now? We really need it right now. But fix it. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Didn't get to talk about other things, but hopefully you enjoy this podcast. And my goal is to do a lot more of these. And yeah, we got to touch a little bit on Manchester United, on a little bit of transfer market, ownership, stuff on Kilian Mbappé and West Indies cricket. I wanted to talk more about the Aussie series. Maybe I should. I mean, we got time. Let's see. Oh, it's a fantastic game of cricket going on in Ashes. Australia up 2-0. It could have been either way. I think Stokes did something He shouldn't have declared on the first day of the first match that early. I think that's the difference there. Second test match. I mean, Australia could have won much more comfortably, but Stokes is just playing ridiculous. Once he gets out there and start hitting those balls, kind of transforming the game again. I'm sure Viv Richards looks at that and he smiles. Yeah, and even this first innings reply, Australia was scuttled out early for what they made 263, and then England looked as if they were going to be out for at least a 70, 80 run deficit. And Ben Stokes again, Ben's, with a magnificent performance in this third test match here, you know, 80 runs. So the lead was only 20 something. And now Australia now is, at 116 for 4. They're only leading by 142. And I put it to you, I mean, Smith is gone, Labuschagne is gone. So right now it's Mitchell Marsh and Head. If they don't come back on day 4, on day 3, and put up a big target, I think in Australia's head, Ben Stokes will do something dangerous again. I mean, for whatever it is, even if they don't win, and this is a must-win game for England, I think Stokes, with the kind of performances when he's on it, yeah, you haven't seen that kind of cricket. It's wild, but it's exciting. So yeah, the series is interesting. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just watching it because you have to be honest. It's good cricket. Australia's best team in the world, fresh off of their Test World Championship as well. So, and England is playing really well, and so it will run close, But we'll see. Again, thanks for joining me on my first podcast. Hope you like it, and leave all the stuff in the comments, and I'll get to them, and I'll try to do a lot more of this. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much, and if you want to support this by sponsoring, feel free to do so. Hit me up. I'll see you guys. Thank you.